October 18th, 1957, 11:52 p.m. Marcus Big Mac Thompson's hand was shaking as he gripped the pistol. $45,000. That was the price the five families had put on Bumpy Johnson's head. And Mac, Bumpy's bodyguard for 6 years, the man Bumpy called brother, had taken the contract. The plan was simple. Walk into Lenox Lounge. Wait until Bumpy was distracted. One shot to the back of the head. Disappear into the night. Mac walked in. Bumpy was at his table. Back turned, vulnerable. Mac drew his weapon, aimed, pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The room went silent. Bumpy slowly turned around, looked Mac dead in the eyes, and said 5 words that would become legend. I was counting on you. But what nobody knew, what history books won't tell you, is that Bumpy Johnson had known about the hit for 3 weeks. And what he did in those 3 weeks didn't just save his life, it changed the rules of power in Harlem forever. To understand what happened that night at Lenox Lounge, you need to understand who Bumpy Johnson was in 1957. He wasn't just a gangster, he was Harlem's protector, the man who stood between his community and the wolves that wanted to devour it. By the late 50s, Harlem was under siege. The Italian mob, specifically the five families, had been trying to take over the neighborhood's numbers racket for years. Numbers was big money, poor folks betting nickels and dimes that added up to millions. And the Italians wanted every penny. But there was a problem. His name was Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy had built something the Italians couldn't understand. He didn't rule through fear alone. He ruled through respect. When Harlem families couldn't pay rent, Bumpy paid it. When police harassed black businesses, Bumpy made a phone call, and the harassment stopped. When Italian mobsters tried to muscle in on local operations, Bumpy pushed back hard. The five families had tried everything. They'd sent enforcers. Bumpy sent them back in ambulances. They tried negotiating. Bumpy told them Harlem wasn't for sale. They tried bribing politicians. Bumpy had better connections. By 1957, the families were desperate, and desperate men make dangerous decisions. Frank Costello, the most powerful mob boss in New York, called a meeting. All five families sent representatives. The topic, the Bumpy Johnson problem. We've tried force. We've tried money. We've tried politics, Costello said, his voice cold and flat. None of it works. This man is untouchable. So what do you suggest? Asked Carlo Gambino, lighting a cigar. Costello leaned forward. We make him touchable. We find the one person he trusts completely, and we turn them. That's when someone mentioned Big Mac. Marcus Big Mac Thompson had been with Bumpy since 1951. 6'3", 245 pounds of muscle and loyalty. He'd taken bullets for Bumpy twice. He'd been there when Bumpy's mother died. He'd been at Bumpy's side through wars with Dutch Schultz's old crew, through police raids, through everything. If anyone could get close enough to kill Bumpy Johnson, it was Big Mac. The family sent Vincent the Collector Corelli to make the approach. Vincent was a specialist. He didn't break legs or crack skulls. He found weaknesses, and every man had a weakness. September 5th, 1957, 6 weeks before the hit. Big Mac was leaving his apartment on 128th Street when a black Cadillac pulled up. The window rolled down. Vincent Corelli sat in the back seat, smiling like an insurance salesman. Mac, right? Big Mac? I've heard a lot about you. Mac's hand moved toward his waistband. Who's asking? A friend. Someone who wants to make you a very wealthy man. Vincent gestured to the empty seat. 5 minutes. Hear me out. If you don't like what I say, you walk away. No hard feelings. Mac should have walked away right then. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. He got in the car. Vincent didn't waste time. You're a smart man, Mac. You know how this works. You're loyal to Bumpy, and that's admirable. But loyalty doesn't pay for your daughter's medical bills. Mac's jaw tightened. His youngest daughter, Lisa, had been sick with pneumonia for 8 months. The treatments were expensive. The hospital bills were piling up. Mac had asked Bumpy for help, and Bumpy had given him $1,500, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Vincent opened a briefcase. Inside were neat stacks of $100 bills. That's what we're offering. Enough to pay every medical bill. Enough to move your family somewhere safe, somewhere clean, where your daughter can breathe. For what? Mac asked, though he already knew the answer. 1 bullet. 1 moment. You walk into Lenox Lounge on October 18th. Bumpy will be there like he always is on Friday nights. You wait until he's distracted. 1 shot to the back of the head. Quick, clean. Then you disappear. We have a car waiting. New identities for your whole family. By morning, you'll be in Miami. By next week, you'll be someone else entirely. Max stared at the money. $45,000. His daughter's life, his family's future, all for one trigger pull. And if I say no, Mac asked quietly. Vincent's smile faded. Then your daughter dies slowly in that charity ward hospital. Then you keep working for Bumpy, watching your back every day, knowing that one day a bullet with your name on it is coming. Because that's how this life ends, Mac. You know it. I know it. The only question is whether you die poor or rich. Mac got out of the car without saying a word, but the briefcase stayed with him. Vincent had left it on the seat, the stacks of money visible, tempting. That night, Mac couldn't sleep. He kept seeing his daughter's face, her labored breathing, the way she tried to smile through the pain. He kept seeing that briefcase full of money, enough money to save her, enough money to give his family a real life. 3 days later, Mac made his decision. He called the number Vincent had left him. I'm in, Mac said, but I want the money up front. Half now, half after. Done, Vincent replied. Welcome to the winning side. But what Big Mac didn't know, what Vincent didn't know, was that before Mac even got into that Cadillac, Bumpy Johnson already knew about the approach. Bumpy Johnson didn't become the king of Harlem by trusting people. He became king by knowing people, by understanding that every man has a price, every man has a weakness, and every man can be bought or broken. Bumpy had eyes everywhere: bartenders, shoeshine boys, cab drivers, janitors, people nobody noticed, people the Italian mob never thought to pay attention to. And one of those people, a parking attendant named Raymond, had seen Vincent Corelli's Cadillac pull up outside Mac's apartment. He'd seen Mac get in. He'd written down the license plate. 2 hours later, Raymond was in Bumpy's office above Small's Paradise Jazz Club. Vincent Corelli's car, Raymond said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. Parked outside Big Mac's place this morning. Mac got in, stayed for 5 minutes, got out. Bumpy looked at the paper, then at Raymond. You sure it was Corelli? Positive. I've seen him before. Collects from the Italian joints on the east side. Bumpy was silent for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer, pulled out $400, and handed it to Raymond. You didn't see anything. You weren't there. Understand? Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson. After Raymond left, Bumpy sat in his office for 2 hours, thinking. Mac had been with him for 6 years. Good years. Loyal years. They'd been through wars together. Bumpy had trusted him with his life. But now the Italians were in Mac's ear. And if there was one thing Bumpy knew about desperate men, it was this: they made bad choices. Bumpy could have killed Mac right then. One phone call, and Mac would disappear into the East River. That's what most men in Bumpy's position would have done. Eliminate the threat. Move on. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't most men. Over the next 6 weeks, Bumpy watched Mac carefully. He saw the way Mac's hands shook sometimes. He saw the worry in Mac's eyes. He saw a man struggling with an impossible choice: loyalty or survival. And Bumpy made a decision. He wouldn't kill Mac. He'd teach him. Bumpy called in a favor from a gunsmith in Brooklyn, a man named Joseph, who'd been modifying firearms for Bumpy for 15 years. I need you to do something for me, Bumpy said. I need you to make a gun that doesn't work. Joseph was confused. You want a broken gun? No. I want a gun that looks perfect, feels perfect. But when you pull the trigger, nothing happens. No bullet, no firing pin strike, just a click. You want a dummy gun, a very convincing dummy gun. Can you do it? Joseph could. Within 3 days, he delivered a modified .28 Special that looked identical to Mac's service weapon. Same weight, same feel, but completely inoperable. The next part required precision timing. Bumpy needed to swap Mac's real gun with the dummy, without Mac noticing. That meant getting into Mac's apartment when Mac wasn't there. On October 14th, 4 days before the hit, Bumpy sent Mac on an errand across town. I need you to pick up an envelope from a contact in the Bronx. It's important. Don't come back without it. The errand would take Mac at least 3 hours, plenty of time. While Mac was gone, Bumpy and his most trusted associate, a man named Chicago Red, entered Mac's apartment. They found Mac's gun in a shoebox under the bed, exactly where Bumpy knew it would be. They swapped it with Joseph's dummy gun. Mac would never know the difference. Now Bumpy had to wait. He had to let Mac make his move. Because if Bumpy confronted Mac before the assassination attempt, Mac could deny everything. The Italians could find another traitor. The cycle would continue. No. Bumpy needed Mac to pull the trigger. He needed Mac to commit. And then, in that ultimate betrayal, Bumpy would reveal the truth. Not just to Mac, but to every person in that room. To all of Harlem. To the 5 families. The message would be clear. You can't kill Bumpy Johnson, because Bumpy Johnson is always 3 moves ahead. October 18th, 1957, 11:52 p.m. Lenox Lounge. The club was packed that night. 250 people. Musicians, hustlers, Businessmen, politicians, Friday night in Harlem meant jazz, cognac, and conversations that shaped the neighborhood's future. Bumpy was at his usual corner table with two city councilmen, discussing a new housing development in Sugar Hill. He wore an impeccable gray suit. His trademark fedora rested on the table beside an untouched glass of Hennessy. Big Mac arrived at 11:30. He'd been drinking, not enough to be drunk, but enough to steady his nerves. In his jacket pocket was the .38 Special, the gun he'd been carrying for 6 years. The gun he thought would make him $45,000 richer. Mac positioned himself near the bar, watching, waiting. Bumpy had his back turned, focused on the conversation, vulnerable. At 11:52, Mac made his move. He walked through the crowd, hand inside his jacket, gripping the pistol. Nobody noticed. Mac was always near Bumpy. He was the bodyguard. His presence was normal, expected. Mac came up behind Bumpy's chair, 6 feet away, then 4, then 2. He drew the gun. The bartender saw it first. His eyes went wide, but before he could shout a warning, Mac had already aimed at the back of Bumpy's head and pulled the trigger. Click. The sound of a firing pin hitting nothing echoed in that suddenly silent room. The jazz band stopped mid-note. Conversations died mid-sentence. 250 people turned to look at Big Mac standing there with a useless gun in his shaking hand, and Bumpy Johnson sitting calmly, not even flinching. Bumpy took a slow sip of his cognac. Then he set the glass down gently and turned around in his chair. He looked at Mac, just looked at him, and in that look was something more terrifying than anger. It was disappointment. "I was counting on you," Bumpy said quietly. Those 5 words hit Mac harder than any bullet, because in that moment, Mac understood. Bumpy had known. He'd known everything. The approach from Vincent Corelli, the $45,000, the plan, all of it. And instead of killing Mac, instead of disappearing him into the river, Bumpy had let him walk into this room and pull that trigger. Let him reveal himself to 250 witnesses. Let him destroy his own reputation, his own honor in front of the entire community. Mac's gun clattered to the floor. His legs gave out. He sank to his knees. "I'm sorry. God, Bumpy, I'm sorry. My daughter. I know about your daughter," Bumpy interrupted. His voice was still quiet, but it carried through the silent room. "I've known for 8 months. You think I don't take care of my people?" Bumpy reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He dropped it on the table. "Lisa's medical bills. All of them, paid in full this morning. There's also a check in there for $5,000 for your family, for whatever you need." Mac's eyes filled with tears. "But why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to know," Bumpy said. "I needed to know if you'd choose money over loyalty, if you'd choose their $45,000 over our brotherhood." He paused. "Now I know." Bumpy stood up. He wasn't a tall man, but in that moment he seemed 10 feet tall. "You're going to leave Harlem tonight. You're going to take your family and you're going to disappear. I don't care where, but if I ever see your face again, if I ever hear your name again, there won't be a second chance. Do you understand?" Mac nodded, tears streaming down his face. "And Mac," Bumpy's voice dropped even lower, "when the Italians ask you what happened here tonight, you tell them exactly what you saw. You tell them Bumpy Johnson knew. You tell them he's always known. You tell them they can't buy loyalty in Harlem. And you tell them if they ever try something like this again, I won't be this merciful." Mac stood on shaking legs, picked up his useless gun, and walked out of Lenox Lounge. He would leave New York that night and never return. The last anyone heard, he was working construction in Chicago, a broken man carrying the weight of his betrayal for the rest of his life. After Mac left, Bumpy turned to face the room. 250 people stared at him in silence. They'd just witnessed something impossible. They'd watched a man try to assassinate Bumpy Johnson, and they'd watched Bumpy turn that assassination into a lesson. "Let me make something clear," Bumpy said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "The Italians think they can buy us. They think they can divide us. They think they can take Harlem because we're poor, because we're black, because we don't matter." He picked up his cognac glass. "They're wrong. Harlem isn't for sale. It never was. It never will be. And anyone who thinks they can change that, anyone who thinks they can walk into my neighborhood and buy my people, they're going to learn what Big Mac just learned. We're not the ones who need protection. They are." Bumpy raised his glass. "To Harlem, and to loyalty that can't be bought." 250 people raised their glasses. "To Harlem." The jazz band started playing again. Conversations resumed. Within minutes, it was as if nothing had happened, except everything had happened. Word of that night spread through New York's underworld like wildfire. By morning, every mobster from Boston to Baltimore had heard the story. Bumpy Johnson had known about the hit for 6 weeks. He'd let it play out. He'd made a traitor reveal himself in front of 250 witnesses, and he'd done it all without spilling a drop of blood. The 5 families called an emergency meeting the next day. Carlo Gambino said something nobody expected. "We can't beat this man. We've tried everything. Force didn't work. Money didn't work. Turning his own people didn't work. Every time we move against him, he's already seen it coming. We leave Harlem alone. It was the first time the Italian mob ever backed down without a shot being fired. Bumpy Johnson lived another 11 years after that night. He died in 1968, not from a bullet, but from a heart attack. Ironically, in the same Lenox Lounge where he'd faced down Big Mac. But here's the thing. Bumpy proved something that night that most people miss. The most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's knowing what's coming before your enemy does. It's turning their plan into your victory. It's playing chess while they're still learning checkers. Big Mac took $45,000 from the mob. He left New York with nothing but shame. And Bumpy? He went back to his corner table, finished his cognac, and kept being the king of Harlem. If this story got you hyped, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're dropping Bumpy Johnson stories every day. Trust me, the next one is even crazier. Drop a comment and let me know. Could Bumpy have handled this differently? Would you have let Mac walk out alive? Turn those notifications on, because next week, we're telling the story of how Bumpy Johnson walked into Lucky Luciano's office, unarmed, and walked out with the deal of the century. You don't want to miss that. Remember, in Harlem, respect wasn't given, it was earned, and Bumpy Johnson earned his every single day.